It is the college football preview podcast, week number 1. We already went over the Thursday and Friday games. Now it's time to get to the weekend slates, Saturday, Sunday, and a little Monday action too. My name is John Jansen, joined as always by Joe Tansey here on the college football preview podcast. You can check it out on YouTube, Fox Sports The Gambler. We're going to have all of our bets for this weekend and go over a few notable games, and that's where we'll start. We already did our week 0 takeaways. So we'll go straight into this week. I think the first one we can go over, the biggest game, at least for Saturday, North Carolina, South Carolina, neutral field. Teams that have expectations, quarterbacks that have been, one was a projected number 1 pick at one point. The other one's now a projected number 2 pick. So there's a lot of interesting things in this game. Let's just start off with that one. North Carolina, South Carolina. What do you think about the battle of the Carolinas?
I'm underwhelmed. I'll be honest with you. I get
wasn't expecting that. Week 1, big game.
Yeah,
okay, underwhelmed.
Yeah.
How are we underwhelmed?
Because South Carolina's been underwhelming under Shane Beamer. I think I don't know what our.
But did they turn a corner though?
I don't know what our actual expectations of South Carolina were supposed to be. I feel like
they got out of hand, obviously, in the offseason.
Right. I feel like we've gotten lost on.
Isn't that really funny, though?
Carolina
like, we'll talk about it all offseason, and then people are probably going to look at this game, and, you know, it'll just be funny when it's like, is South Carolina really that good, though? Like, once you start getting into betting the games, and you go, wait. Do I really want to bet South Carolina like that?
I feel like South Carolina is treading dangerously on that line. You know, we talked about in our Friday preview about Minnesota and Michigan State. And having that flash in the pan season. Now, South Carolina didn't have that. But I feel like we talk in South Carolina in the same vein to an extent of what Minnesota and Michigan State did for like 1 or 2 seasons. I'm kind of in prove-it mode with South Carolina. Is prove it to me that you actually can compete with the elites of the elite. And just maybe in the SEC East. It's hard to gauge expectations and how you live up to them in the SEC, because the top is just so hard to reach, and we'll see with Tennessee this year. Once you get close to the sun, that may be as close as you can get, and that's just kind of what the reality is. North Carolina, great. We know what they're going to do. Drake May is going to throw up and down the field. He's going to get a lot of buzz, but is their defense any better than it has been? And also, Phil Longo being gone, the offensive coordinator, and going to Wisconsin, I don't think a lot of people are talking up that as a potentially massive storyline with North Carolina. Yes, Drake May has a ton of talent and absolutely should be talked about among the best quarterbacks in college football. But if we hit September, the end of September, and North Carolina is underwhelming a bit, I wouldn't be surprised because of the offensive coordinator change. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a close game. At least we'll have that. But I feel like it's an underwhelming opener compared to like LSU and Florida State on Sunday. Like the Saturday night.
I mean,
game,
that's basically is that game
LSU
Florida State's almost the Georgia Oregon from last year. Like that's
it is the game.
These two kind of like college football playoff contenders. The big game for sure. It's the biggest game.
Who could be? I'll go the opposite side of the spectrum here. Could be overrated.
Who?
LSU and Florida State.
Wow, overrated. Which one? Both? All of it? The entire game? All of them? The whole thing? The whole shebang?
Let's. I guess that's the game of the week. It's the top 10 shit. Let's get into it. We'll get to North Carolina and South Carolina later. They can be in the back seat here of the conversation. But I feel like we're buying into the preseason hype on both of these teams heavily. And is it because Clemson doesn't have a challenger in the ACC? Is it because it's Florida State? It's name brand. They're back. I would believe more than LSU because it's LSU. It's Brian Kelly. He's got a proven track record.
Great track record.
Mike Norvell still has to prove it to meet Florida State. But is five? Is that where we're going with LSU this early in the season? When they might be they could be the third best team in the SEC West. They could be second. They could
right. They could end up being.
It just feels like because it's the SEC West.
I like LSU
variability.
I think what Brian Kelly has done with the transfer portal last year.
Right.
He has the experienced quarterback too in Jaden Daniels. So I think, LSU's set up, man. They are loaded with talent. Brian Kelly, again, as you just mentioned, the proven track record. I do we wipe away the previous couple of years before that with Ed Orgeron,
Yes,
and it's just
absolutely.
everything's right and everything's
Right.
better? And my answer to that is yes. Like, I think this LSU team has not only turned the corner to be better than that, but I think they're back to. I mean, this team that's always competed on a certain level. I think they're back to that with Kelly, and Kelly's that kind of coach, and the talent I think speaks that way as well, and the veteran quarterback. So to me, as much as I like Florida State, I think they're going to be competing with Clemson in the ACC. I think the bigger game for them is going to be against Clemson, which is just in a few weeks. So that game's coming up very close. But this one, I think, is
I don't think they will. I don't think
just
they'll
too
compete with
much.
Clemson.
I like Clemson. I think Clemson wins the ACC.
Like Clemson,
so that's why it's a good exercise to ask you, because I am more along the lines of I think Florida State might be a little, I didn't say overrated because I think they're very good, but I just don't know if they compete on that same level with a Clemson and an LSU with the way they are. I mean, Clemson last year, yes, but not this version.
We have Alabama syndrome with Clemson, and it's now it's now Georgia syndrome, where Clemson is Clemson until they're not Clemson. That's basically what it is. And Alabama is Alabama until they're not Alabama, and Georgia is still Georgia until they're not Georgia at this point. Like, that's where we are with Clemson in the ACC, and no one has really given us more than a year of a sample size to prove us wrong.
Right. Florida gave us last year, but that's obviously last year. Pittsburgh gave us a couple of years ago, but that was a couple.
But there hasn't been sustained excellence in the ACC.
Yep. It's only been Clemson.
Outside of Clemson. So who's to say, when we're doing this on November 29th, Clemson's in a discussion for the playoff. So Florida State has to climb that mountain, and I feel like we elevated them up on that mountain maybe a little too high, too quick. Yes.
Yep.
I'm not discounting that they have a veteran quarterback in Jordan Travis who will be at least in the mix for the Heisman conversation if he plays well on Sunday. Yes, I understand Jared Verse getting a ton of love, and rightfully so. But I think in terms of where we view Florida State in the national conversation, is number 8, like, are they really the 8th best team in the country? I don't know. And they could go out and lay an egg against LSU. And I would trust Brian Kelly to have his team ready to manage expectations a lot more in preseason than I would Mike Norvell right now. And there's a long track record for me to go off of that with Brian Kelly. I'm not saying LSU is going to win the game. I'm just saying in terms of preparation, LSU is in a much better spot. Now, Mason Smith being suspended, the defensive tackle, is a huge miss, and that may play a role in the game and may overinflate Florida State's expectations if they win. I don't have a side on this game. I'm probably not going to bet it because of that big absence in the middle, and I don't know if I completely trust Florida State, but it feels like at least the preseason rankings, we've overinflated both of these teams just a little bit. I could be completely wrong, but it feels like the numbers attached to them, they just don't belong right now. And I don't know who else would replace them. That's the thing.
Right. Maybe not right now. I would believe in LSU more, I would say, just because of Brian Kelly. I think it is fine to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Absolutely.
And taking over a program like LSU that has been good. I know Florida State has prestigious history, but not like the way LSU was, lately.
Right.
So LSU, I believe in them more. I think they can compete with Alabama in the SEC. It's obviously going to be tough. But Jaden Daniels, as much as Jordan Travis gets all this love, and he's getting a ton of love right now in Mike Norvell's system. But Jaden Daniels is great. And the only reason why we're not talking about him like that is because he was there when Herm Edwards was at Arizona State. And we found out how bad things got at Arizona State with Herm Edwards. So Daniels had to get himself kind of out of this terrible situation. And last year, I thought played well and just got better as the season went along. So now he's going into a year in the same system, confident. Jordan Travis has been at Florida State forever. So like this ceiling, I don't know if it gets much better than last year.
Right. How high is the ceiling on him since he's been there forever? At least with Daniels, you can make the case
I can see,
the ceiling is
yes.
higher.
I feel like I can make a good case that the ceiling is higher. This was a guy that was getting pro attention, Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels was getting a lot of attention when he first got to Arizona State and had some early success with Herm Edwards, but that didn't obviously happen. And I think a lot of it was Herm Edwards' fault. So now Jaden Daniels is in a stable organization.
You can say organization. You can say
it's
that's
weird.
what college football is.
It is. It
He's
is
in a stable organization.
But a stable program, a really good head coach.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with that whole stink of Arizona State behind him and probably going into this season way more confident than he did last year, I think we're due for a very big year for Daniel.
And let's be honest,
I do see that.
LSU had stink on them too.
Oh, LSU did.
I love Ed Ogeron. Think he's a fantastic personality, and everything was perfect for them to win the Natty. But things went south with him very quickly, and LSU had to rebuild that whole thing. Like the fact that Brian Kelly got so much out of them last year is astonishing and speaks to the coach that he is. So I think LSU is reloaded. Now they got some questions at wide receiver. And that's why
running back. They look great, by the way, though.
Right.
Running back.
That's why I'm kind of just hesitant on betting this. It's the game of the week.
Yep.
On Sunday night in prime time. Everybody's going to have eyes on both of these teams. But there's enough questions on either side. I think Mason Smith being suspended, recording this on Tuesday, I don't know if that would change. But yeah, I feel like it's kind of the coward's way out to not bet the biggest game of the week in the return of college football. But
I mean, I'm leaning LSU, and it seems like
I lean LSU too, but I'm not gonna I don't feel 100% sold as I do with some of the other bets I have on the.
I'm getting close. I will say I'm getting close to almost being 100% sold on LSU.
I'll be honest with you, if my confidence level on Sunday is high after Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I might just go for the gusto with LSU.
Yeah.
But I'm not there yet, so I'm not gonna officially say LSU is the pick. But if you made me pick a team, I would pick LSU.
Yeah, and one thing with Florida State is obviously their offense gets talked about a lot. Mm-hmm. Defensively, they're very good. LSU should be about as good defensively as Florida State this season. There's not much of a difference there. It is a very even matchup. But again, I think sustained success finds LSU a little bit better than it does Florida State. So we went over North Carolina, South Carolina a little bit. I don't know if you want to go back to that. If you want to go to Clemson Duke on, I think that's a Monday game. If you want to go to that, what's next? What's your other notable game here, Joe? And then
I don't think there is another notable game.
Yeah, it's weird to say about week one.
Like, and week one is I think
Clemson Duke is, but
I don't think it is.
That's just me more curious about Klubnik and if there is a
right. You're intrigued about Clemson. You're not intrigued about Duke.
I'm intrigued about Riley Leonard, but I mean, no. Is that going into our?
Don't.
I'm also intrigued by the spread. It's only a 13-point spread. Any other year with Duke and Clemson, this is about a 20-point spread.
And I will gladly take my betting sledgehammer out and bet Clemson on that game. Like, again,
that number's enticing to me. I think that's where my interest does lie.
I have Alabama syndrome. Like, it really is true. Georgia syndrome, whatever you want to call it. Like, that's what I have with Clemson. Like, look down the rest of this Saturday schedule. I think there's 2 Saturday and Sunday combined. I think there's 2 teams playing true road games in the top 25. One of them is Ohio State at Indiana, and that's intriguing only because of who Ohio State's replacing at quarterback. Kyle McCord got named the starter. He's coming in, but he's coming into a fantastic offense. He's playing Indiana, who hasn't, again, had their one lightning in the bottle season with Michael Penix Jr.
Yep.
And that's it. So that really isn't a test. And then Oregon State on Sunday at San Jose State with DJ Uiagalelei starting his career with the Beavers, who might have a shot at the Pac-12. They're a team that is on the outside looking in at the top 3 or 4 right now, but we could be talking about them in a month very clearly in this conversation. But other than that, North Carolina is not on the road. I mean, they're listed as the road team in Charlotte, but it's game in Charlotte. Yeah. And then you have Clemson at Duke on a Monday. But that's all you have in terms of road games. And if you look down the top 25 at like potential, to use the App State conversation, I mean, do we really buy into Colorado at TCU? I don't know enough to win that game. I don't know.
I think
And
it's going to
everybody
be
else is playing
very
cupcakes.
easy to bet Colorado because TCU has lost obviously notable players.
Right.
Considered a fluky national champion team in that college football championship game. And Colorado, is going to be the sexy pick because it's Deion Sanders. His kid looks good. I will say that Shador Sanders is a good quarterback, but
They
how
have the talent. They have the talent. No one's questioning that.
good? But I will say TCU should be fine with Sonny Dykes as head coach.
Yeah, and look, I think honestly the biggest upset alert there is Tulane in the top 25. I think South Alabama at Tulane might be the game that gets a lot of people's attention if these games become blowouts. I mean, South Alabama is a team that a lot of people are picking in the Sun Belt, and you have Tulane again, rightfully so, a top 25 team after the year they had last year. But that game's only a touchdown spread. There's a reason why it is what it is. So yeah, I think if you look at the top 25 and true upset alerts, you could see. I think you have to. I guess North Carolina and Tulane are 1 and 2 just because the rest of the matchups kind of stink.
They do. Let's get into some of the bets that we like. I'll let you start first, Joe, because I'm going with a lot of favorites. I don't know if I should. A lot of big favorites,
Yeah,
but I feel like that's a week one thing. That seems to be the case.
it is now. Look, a lot of these teams may not end up winning, or end up covering the spread. But when you look at
But
some of
this is
these
just how
matchups
week
on
one
paper,
goes.
right?
Like it's big favorites, but they're big favorites against teams that stink, and
Right.
they have been covering these games.
And I think usually we go to teams that stink when it comes to Group of Five or FCS. There are distinctly two Power Five teams that stink that are going to get railroaded this weekend in Knoxville, Tennessee, and in State College. I mean, look,
the State College one, I'm with you on that.
Virginia, it's unfortunate what happened at the end of the season with them. Brennan Armstrong is gone. They're not going to be very good. Tennessee, look, we know what they can do offensively. And Joe Milton, I think, is a step down from Hendon Hooker. But when you look at this opponent, I think it's going to be very easy for Tennessee to get through this. I'm all over Tennessee in every which way you can. I'll take them at minus 28. I'll take them at minus 16.5 in the first half. I think that game is going to be over very quickly. And then Penn State. I mean, a lot of people are hyping them up. Whether you want to believe it or not, they're hyping them up for the college football playoff. Drew Aller is the real deal.
Man.
But
the talent's worth hyping up.
Absolutely.
And especially against West Virginia, there's no talent in West Virginia.
But to me, I don't think Drew Aller is the guy you hype up in this game. I think it's Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, the running backs. I think they're going to have fantastic days. If you're in a state where you can get player props, those two guys, target them. I think they're going to have massive days.
Yeah, they're both going to combine. The Penn State's going to have 250 plus yards rushing as a team.
Right. I think this is a game where everybody realizes on the national stage just how incredible Penn State's rushing attack is. So I'm doing the same thing as I am with Tennessee. Minus 20.5, and the first half line is minus 11.5 of Penn State over West Virginia. I think a lot of people are in agreement this game is not going to be close.
Yeah, I'm going one very big spread, but I'm going to stick to a first half. Should I go? I think I'm going to stick to the first half because I think this is going to get ugly early. No Jim Harbaugh on the sideline, but Michigan, 21.5-point favorites in the first half, taking on East Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Michigan is going to roll through the first part of this schedule, the first 3 games.
They might roll through their entire schedule until they get to Ohio State.
And 36 is big, but I don't think 36 is even big enough. ECU is down a starting quarterback. ECU is losing wide receivers. They lost their top running back to the NFL as well. They have nothing on offense. Michigan's going to take over the line of scrimmage very easily the way that they have. I mean, if they're bullying the line of scrimmage against Ohio State, they're going to bully it against East Carolina, and they have a quarterback who's going to make his first ever start in the Big House. Michigan's going to roll roll in this game. I'm just taking the first half because, what if they do let off the gas, all that stuff, even though, again, I don't think 36 high enough. This is a score that you're probably going to see 56-7 along those lines.
Yeah, that's
but
fair.
I'll just take a first half because I think Michigan just pours it on early. And I would
That's
be
fair.
afraid if they let off the gas a little bit.
Yeah, and look, Michigan, you'd be very surprising if they do end up that big of a without that big of a lead, as I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Top 20, not a top 25 game, but a game I think that will have a lot of people's attention because it's a West Coast game, standalone game on ESPN, and a familiar face that is back. Grayson McCall. Look, we've talked about quarterbacks
Grayson
that
McCall,
have been around
welcome.
forever, but Coastal Carolina, new head coach. Yeah, I understand that. But UCLA is in this weird flux at quarterback. DTR finally gone. College football, I don't know if legend's the right word, but he was an old head of college football. And now they have this quarterback battle that I don't think Chip Kelly's sure of what he's going to throw out there. I think there's some uncertainty with UCLA, especially at quarterback. And when you have an experienced quarterback in an offense that can put up points in Coastal Carolina, look, I know that line's coming down a little bit, but I'll take Coastal Carolina plus 14.5 against UCLA. This feels like a game that will be very exciting, one worth staying up for on Saturday night, and one I think Coastal Carolina, I don't want to go as far as saying that they'll pull off the upset and cash the money line, but plus 14.5, I think that's too big of a spread in favor of UCLA given their state of quarterback.
Yeah, I'm God, I just saw the Oregon State San Jose State line. Oregon State, I should probably be paying a little bit more attention to. That's just a random thought. They're 16.5-point favorite against San Jose State, who obviously played USC. But yeah, maybe I should be paying attention more to them. But I am going to bet that North Carolina-South Carolina game. South Carolina's defense is just not good. So UNC's isn't. But South Carolina, I think it's just a given because they're an SEC team that they are good defensively. They're really not. And so now comes Drake May, again, in Charlotte, neutral field. I don't think there's going to be as big of a drop because what happened with Sam Howell was had that really good year early, dropped off because they lost a ton of talent, lost a ton of NFL caliber running backs, and just didn't have the same year. I don't think we're going to see that much of a drop off, and UNC's defense is a problem. But if this game ends up being a shootout, why can't UNC's defense get a few stops against Spencer Rattler and South Carolina, who might just stop themselves? Like, who might be a bigger problem, because I don't know if Rattler's fixed. They looked really good at the end of the season. They put up 63 points against Tennessee in the second to last game of the last season. So South Carolina's offense, look, it's going to be okay. I think they'll be fine. But if this game turns into a shootout, and I think it can, I think North Carolina's offense is better, and I think North Carolina will be better this season than they were last. Look, can they win the ACC? Stuff like that. That's a whole different question. But for this game, I'm not scared of a South Carolina team that finished the year as well as it did, but also I'm not scared of them because of the SEC, because they don't have an SEC type defense. It's a defense that can be thrown on, can be beat, and Drake May is the guy to beat him.
Yeah, we're going to go off the rails a little bit here.
Love it.
This is something I think either you and I talked about, or I talked with Mark Henry about, and I usually don't like betting trends, but I'm going to have to here. I'm taking North Texas plus 6.5 against Cal. Justin Wilcox, the Cal head coach, is incredible as an underdog. As a favorite, not so much. And this is also just a weird game. Like Cal, a program that's in flux, like let's be honest with ourselves of where they stand in the college football landscape, scheduling a true road game against a G5 team in North Texas who's been pretty decent over the last few years. This feels like a game where Cal looks at it and like, well, why did we schedule this? That's really what it looks like to me. And I'm just going straight off of a trend, and I absolutely hate that. But why would the Cal Golden Bears want to play in Denton, Texas?
Why? It's a good underdog. It's the one I mean, there aren't many home underdogs on the slate for this weekend, and no games that really going to be paying attention to. But that seems like a home dog to me that at least pops out. I don't know. I'm all on favorites this week. Like I am perfectly okay in week 1 betting a Penn State 20.5. I'm perfectly okay betting a Michigan 21.5 in the first half, or North Carolina even as a slight favorite. I would even say my other bet, my fourth bet, my final one's going to be Clemson 13 against Duke. I think that's a short number. Yeah. Anything under 2 touchdowns is good here. Clemson's defense is going to be great. And I love Riley Leonard, but is Riley Leonard going to be able to beat that front 7? Like, it's great that Leonard can run and can throw. He's like this great dual threat, but can he be dual threat against Jeremiah Trotter Jr.? I don't know if that's going to be possible.
You know my rule.
It's going to be very
Clemson.
hard to do.
You know my rule with Clemson. 14 and under, bang.
Yeah, I feel like that's where I'm.
Absolutely.
There's a little bit too much love here for either too much love for Duke or not enough love for Clemson. And I want to say it's at least the former than the latter.
Humor me for a second. Let me see if I can. If this
You're going to look up a first half or something? What are you doing there? What are you looking up?
I want an alternate.
You want an alternate? Yeah. How high are you going to go?
I would bet Clemson up to 20. The alternate lines aren't on DraftKings yet. I don't know if they will. I would take Clemson up to 3 touchdowns against Duke.
Yeah.
And yes, and it goes exactly for everything we've talked about with Alabama syndrome, with Clemson. Clemson's still Clemson.
Clemson won double-digit games last year.
Like, I think people are forgetting, like, Clemson is still Clemson. Duke is still Duke. Duke may have a nice quarterback, but when you put this talent up against each other, Clemson against Duke, Clemson wins this game by 3 touchdowns easily. So yes, I will be on the hunt for alternate lines for Clemson up to 21 points.
Yeah, it could be intriguing if that spread offense with Garrett Riley, that kind of air raid offense, gets going early this season. Like, they could put up some points. Not going to be perfect, but it'll be good enough to put up points on Duke. And Clemson defensively, that's really where you win this bet. Yeah. Is that Clemson's going to stifle them big time. I know Riley Leonard's been getting all this attention, but dude, that front 7 is ferocious.
Riley Leonard has not been getting attention on my end. I will tell you that.
I know he is. I mean, he is there. He's been talked about, and as an interesting ACC kind of under the radar quarterback, but just not in this game. Anything else for you, Joe? Those are my 4 bets. I'll just lay them out real quick. Penn State 20.5 against West Virginia. North Carolina 2.5-point favorite against South Carolina. I'm taking Michigan on the first half 21.5 against East Carolina, and then Clemson 13-point favorites against Duke. It's a lot of favorites. I know at least one of these teams are going to lose, but I feel like this is the way to go in week 1. Just taking these big favorites. They're big favorites for a reason, and usually, I think what I can justify it is this. Penn State, by the end of the season, is going to be a much bigger favorite if they played West Virginia by the end of the season. Like, it is projecting a little bit what these teams are going to be. But, yeah, I think West Virginia is not going to be good, but it's still West Virginia. And so 20.5 points, is a little bit because it's 2 Power 5 programs. This is just not big enough, though. So it's stuff like that. So those are my 4 bets.
Tennessee first half, Tennessee full game. Penn State first half, Penn State full game.
I love the double dipping on that. I probably should do that with Penn State.
I will take North Texas on principle there, and I'm taking Clemson on principle, and I will take Clemson as far up to 21 points as I can find. I will search around books until Monday night to find Clemson as high as 21, because I really do think they're going to obliterate Duke, and that line is just so favorable. So yeah. Keep it easy with some of the favorites, but we also took a lot of dogs on Thursday and Friday.
Yes, we did. I think that is the better day for dogs because obviously you're getting a little bit tighter matchups, weirder matchups. But this is Saturday and Sunday where you're getting the big point spreads, and it's the way to go for me in week 1. So that is it for the college football preview week 1. We'll be back for week 2 next week. Of course, you can always follow along on YouTube, Fox Sports The Gambler. Check us out over on our website, foxphlgambler.com, and on Twitter at foxphlgambler. That's Joe Tansey at jtansey90. My name is John Jansen at jjansen34. We'll be back next week. Good luck with week 1 of the college football season.